Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we'll be talking about the upcoming offensive. More specifically, who will launch the next offensive. So the past couple of days I've been doing some polls to check out what my viewers think. First I asked who will launch the next offensive. 45% of the 18,000 who voted said it would be Ukraine, while 55% believed it would be Russia. Yesterday I asked, if Ukraine launches the summer offensive, when will it happen? And if Russia did, when? Then we have 26% who said Russia would do it before July, 37% said Ukraine would do it before July, 23% who say Russia would do it after July, and Ukraine's 14% said they would do it after July. So this is actually very interesting. First off, we see that 55% believe Russia will do it, 45% will believe Ukraine will do it. If you look at the situation, we have to think, okay, what factors do we have to conclude for us to know that one side is able to complete an offensive? First off, they would need the units to perform the offensive. Second off, they would need to be able to have different factors in their favor. First off, you will need the weather to be good so that either side can launch an offensive. Then we need to have proper supplies, proper preparation, and they need to concentrate their forces. So these are indicators that the offensive will happen. Proper weather will come in the summer, which is why I said before and after July, because it would most likely happen in the summer if someone launches an offensive. Proper preparation, that means that they need to prepare, they need to attack the supply lines, they need to properly prepare their front line and so on. And they all have to stockpile their ammunition and so on close to the front line so that they're able to replenish their supplies once they launch their offensive. And finally, concentration of forces. They need the actual forces to be by the front line before an offensive can happen. So far, there's been no concentration of forces. This usually happens very close to the offensive launching because all the other parts need to be prepared first, and troops being sent to the front line is the final part. Now, which side has the capabilities to launch an offensive? And by capabilities, I mean they need to be able to have the equipment and the personnel needed. The Russians, they have their pilots trained, they have their weapons prepared, they have their tanks ready, they have their personnel trained. The only reason they aren't launching an offensive, in my eyes, is that they are planning to do it after a Ukrainian offensive. I'll get into that later. What about the Ukrainians? Are they ready to launch an offensive? They have everything they need except for one thing, and that is air superiority. Currently, the Russian forces would be able to just bombard and airstrike any Ukrainian offensive. The Ukrainians do not have proper portable anti-air defense systems to support an offensive. Their static systems are the Patriot system and RST system. It is in Kiev and Lviv and other cities, and these are static, they're not portable, they are placed in place and they cannot move by themselves. So this means that if Ukraine launches an offensive, they do not have the capabilities to prevent Russian Air Force from destroying their offensive. For this, they are continuously asking for the F-16 fighter jets. This is because the F-16 can be used to attack opponent aircraft. So most likely if the Ukrainians receive these F-16s, although it is a multi-role fighter, which means that they can both be used for close air support and also air superiority, they will most likely try to use these to prevent Russian air superiority, and a combination of both most likely, but their main focus would be to shoot down Russian jets. So until they receive these fighter jets, the F-16s, and their pilots are trained, then they will not be ready for an offensive, which means that it is unlikely that they're able to launch an offensive by this summer, unless the Western countries have already trained the pilots. According to a source, I'll keep them unanimous for now. I'll keep them anonymous for now, but essentially this source claims that the United States recently sent 90 F-16 fighter jets to Europe. This could be an indication of one of two things. either that they are ready to train Ukrainian pilots and they have sent these to Europe so that they're able to train, or that they are ready to send them into Ukraine. Most likely it is that they're ready to train. They recently announced that they would train Ukrainian pilots together with a lot of European countries. So essentially, Ukraine will most likely get fighter jets, but not now, in the future. As for air defense systems, they may receive some further systems, but so far there's no indication that they're receiving any of the more portable mobile systems that they need for an offensive. Which means that most likely if Ukraine launches an offensive, it will be very difficult for them to actually do so, as the situation would not be in their favor, considering that the Russian Air Force will be allowed to just bombard their positions when they gather and concentrate their troops, as well as when they build up their stockpiles of ammunition and so on, which could indicate why they haven't launched the offensive yet. They have been unable to concentrate enough forces and to prepare their ammunition and so on, because whenever they do so, the Russian forces just airstrike or artillery strike or missile strike their positions, which prevent them from building up their forces. In this case, all they can do is continue this battle of attrition, which is working in Russia's favor because they have such a significant air superiority as well as firepower superiority. So essentially, Ukraine is in a position where they have to conduct an offensive because they have to justify all of the Western countries sending them ammunition and weapons and so on. If they just receive a lot of weapons and don't achieve anything, that would reduce the morale of the forces. And at the same time, they are taking a lot of casualties in this battle of attrition as the Russian forces are out-damaging them with their heavy firepower advantage. So they need to break this stalemate, this battle of attrition, and enter a new phase. And this phase will be determining whether or not they can continue fighting. That is because if they do not receive any success with this, then the morale will completely diminish, and the Russians will be able to launch a counteroffensive. While if it does succeed, then they'll be able to receive new batches of weaponry and so on. Their F-16 pilots can be trained, and they will be able to launch a new offensive. Now, the thing is, okay, if the Ukrainians know that if they launch an offensive, the Russians will launch a counteroffensive, when would the optimal time for this offensive be then? It would be very close to the rainy season. So most likely at the very end of the summer period. Why is this? Because if the offensive is launched during the time where the ground is steady, there's no mud and so on, they are able to launch the offensive. And then when the offensive ends, the Russians are able to launch a counteroffensive. However, the ground becomes muddy. That will prevent a Russian counteroffensive. And then they just hold the line all through the fall season. And then when winter arrives and the ground is frozen, then they have recovered their forces enough to launch another offensive so that they will continuously be on the move. However, the Russian forces would be able to anticipate that, and they may preemptively launch their own offensive if they near the end of the summer season and close in on the fall season. So we could see a simultaneous attack, or essentially a game of chicken: who launches the offensive first, who launched the counteroffensive, and so on. So there's a lot of factors to delve into, and I cannot cover all of these in one video. So I'll be making a video series where I cover all of these factors. If Ukraine launches an offensive before July, how would it be like? What factors do they need to do? How much equipment do they need? And all of these things. If Russia did it before July, what would it look like? What would the objectives be? And so on. And the same with after July, in the fall season, in the winter season. All of these things, I need to go through them. Essentially, especially now when there's basically no news on the front line, nothing is happening. The Wagner has pulled out of Bakhmut. The Russian forces are building up their forces continuously. The Ukrainian forces are preparing for the offensive. There's all of these things that we have to take into consideration. So I'll try to do all of these speculative things here while we're waiting for news. And then once the things actually happen, then I'll of course cover it and do it as fast as I can. I'll try to bring out the honest truth as fast as I can and as reliable as I can. Thank you all for watching this video. Hope you all have a great day, and see you next time.